first step is the hardest,
Mm.
and getting over your fear, that's the hardest hurdle.
Yep.
And once you do that and you start doing the small steps,
Mm-hmm.
they will grow and snowball into bigger
Mm.
steps.
Alrighty, and we're live. Kind of.
Very terrifying.
That's my warm up. So hey, it's good to meet you for the first time.
Yeah.
You're into a lot of things like Ikebana, harp, wax seals.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I looked on. We know each other from X,
Yeah.
formerly Twitter, right? Or Twix. And it's funny. I don't remember exactly how I discovered your account, but Twitter suggests people, oh, you might want to follow this person. And I thought, Ikebana. Like, well, that's cool. I want to learn about Ikebana. Not that it's going to be a life pursuit, but like, it's cool. So tell me a story. Like, how did you get into Ikebana?
It's funny. I almost think it was like haphazardly because living in Japan, you just kind of saw Ikebana here and there, and I didn't grow up doing a lot of artistic things. I'm very bad at drawing, so I'd see Ikebana, like, that's really cool. I could never do that. And then at my station, there was an Ikebana exhibition. I was like, yeah, this is really neat. And I do love flowers and plants and nature. I have gardens and all that growing up with that. And then I just mentioned to a coworker casually, like, yeah, I saw this Ikebana thing. It's really cool. And my coworker's like, well, why don't we just try it? We could do a trial lesson together. And I was like, oh, all right. And I just Googled literally Ikebana Yokohama. And the first person that popped up, I just clicked on. I'm like, all right, and then I called them and just set up a trial lesson. So it's kind of, I feel like most things in my life, I just kind of do it and don't think too much about it, and then just jump right in.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what was that first trial lesson like? Did anything stick out, or was it?
I think I ended up doing the trial lesson by myself. I think my coworker couldn't do it the same day, so I was there by myself.
Wow.
With the teacher. And again, I knew nothing about Ikebana. I had no idea there was different schools of Ikebana. I just tried it, and from what I can remember, like, the feelings that come up are like actually touching branches and like bending them and cutting flowers, because mostly flowers, you just look at them. You don't really touch flowers. You don't touch branches so much. So that was really weird. But like, as I was doing the Ikebana, I just felt like this missing, almost like a broken wire, just connected itself again. And I was like, wow, like, this is like really touching. I'm like, wow, I really like this. And like, since that first lesson, I've just been going at it as hard as I can.
Wow. So I saw another podcast with you. You talked about a requirement for renting a home is that they have a garden, and they allow you to to basically arrange the garden, right? So
yeah, like in the past, I've had been renting houses, and I want a garden, and I've kind of always gone of just change first and ask forgiveness later. And luckily, no one has ever said anything, because I usually, when I moved into a house, like, there's one house where the weeds were this high, like up to my chest.
Up to your chest, okay.
And I was like, all right. And then I want to do everything by hand, nothing electric, just mechanical tools. It took me about 6 or 7 months to de-weed and then turn the soil and put the sod down and make a garden. And so it was like completely unrecognizable. And we moved out, like, no one said anything. And same with another house. I cut down like 4 trees. I'm like, sorry about it. And then just redid their garden space. And then when I moved out, no one said a thing. And I was like, pretty lucky. But I was lucky to buy a house last year with a nice large space that I could turn into a beautiful garden, step by step. But
nice.
Definitely having a garden was always a requirement.
Yeah. So, kind of switching gears here, what's it like to buy a house in Japan as a foreigner?
It was very stressful, right? Because being as a foreigner, and I have permanent residency, which is a huge help to get a banking loan. And what I found the most stressful is with real estate agents. They're really quick to overpromise but kind of underdeliver.
Oh,
So
really?
like for the first attempt at a bank loan, they'd be like, "Oh, you're gonna get this for sure. You've already passed the pre-loan, and we're gonna hear back in like 3 days." And then like 2 weeks later, I'm like, "What's going on?" And so last year there was a good 6 months of just high anxiety and stress for me because I don't love waiting so much for things that I really want. And then I went through I think five different loan processes, and they would just say it's not you. It's the company that built the house. I'm like, well, that doesn't give me a lot of information. And it wasn't until I think my sixth bank application, and each application takes hours to do, and you have to write everything in kanji.
I bet it's all by hand, right?
All by hand. If you make a mistake, you got to start again. So it was not fun. And we finally figured out that the survey of the land was incorrect off by like a square meter. And so
Oh my
that
gosh.
just automatically defaulted all the applications to fail. So they finally fixed that, and then I got the loan. But
And
it was
is it
6 months of.
Is it like a computer where you get a random error, like an error happened, please try again?
I think the first loan process is like with your data. It's like an online application, and that goes through like a computer. It goes through their requirements, and then if that passes, an actual person looks at it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
do they tell you like, oh, the survey was off?
No,
Or do they just
like,
reject it?
It wasn't until like the fifth attempt that they found out, and I'm not even sure how they did. They didn't really say how they discovered it, but this one bank I think actually took the time to look into it and figure out the reason why. Because they just come on and say it's not you, it's them. I'm like, okay, but well, I'm the one buying the house, so why does it have to rely on them? But yeah, so it was stressful.
Okay, because I've been getting involved in Akia recently, and I found out one of the hardest things is, you see these videos if you're on Instagram or Twitter and YouTube as well. And I met Anton, the guy who wrote Buying Houses in Japan. A really interesting guy. And so he's kind of my go-to source for information. But I talked to what they call in Japan a gyosei shoshi, which is in English would be administrative lawyer. So there are different levels of lawyers in Japan. There's gyosei shoshi, shiho shoshi, and bengoshi, right? Gyosei shoshi is administrative. They can do everything like immigration, paperwork, bureaucracy stuff. Shiho shoshi does like a higher level, and bengoshi does all the stuff. So the big difference is the first two levels can't do like a murder trial, which you don't get into that to do that anyway. A lot of the professionals in Japan will do like immigration, paperwork. They'll do registering houses. So I talked to a gyosei shoshi, administrative lawyer, and she said, I said, well, I found this empty house that I want to buy. And she said, oh, well, the problem is they can't find the owner. Okay. So I guess if you went to an agency and said, I want to buy a house, then they could find you a house that's ready to sell.
Yeah.
So, but if you go the opposite way, the other direction, you find a house you want to buy, then you have to find the owner, and everything's on paper. And then sometimes what happens, since up until recently, maybe this generation, Japanese lived in multi-generational homes.
Yeah.
So sometimes the great-grandparents would own the home and then pass away, give it to the grandparents, give that to the parents. Then they have children who are like college age, and the parents are, maybe in 10 or 20 years, the parents are going to pass away. So the fourth generation now owns the home, but they never transferred ownership.
I guess they're supposed to. But,
right?
Yeah.
And then if those people, you have to go back up through their lineage and genealogy and find, okay, does anybody else have a claim on the property? Right? Because these people 4 generations ago owned it, which means the oldest who lived in the house had a claim on it because he lived there, but his 2 brothers and sisters also have a claim. So you have to get their hanko to buy the house. So if you go back 4 generations and find every single person that possibly has a claim on the property, you're going to spend 100,000, 200,000 yen, $1,000 to $2,000 roughly, in legal fees, just to find out who owns it and to get their okay. And then we talked about this before we started recording. Is like sometimes Japanese families don't get along, and there could have been a fight between the aunt and the uncle 20 years ago, and they haven't spoken. So if you go and say, hey, Aunt Tanaka, there's somebody, oh, by the way, a foreigner who wants to buy a house. Okay, one strike. No. I'm not going to sell this to a foreigner. Or they can say, well, the uncle said yes. And she said, well, then I'm going to say no. Just to spite him. Right?
So does that mean our IKEA is worth it?
Yeah, it's, you have to find, I was explaining to the administrative lawyer, I said, you have to find the Goldilocks property. Right? And I explained what Goldilocks is, too hot, too cold, just right. Right. So you have to find the Goldilocks property, and fortunately, I know a lawyer who deals in probate, and then has to sometimes find a buyer for a house to pay off this person's debts when they pass away. So they need to get rid of the house, which that's my ace in the hole. Is I know this lawyer, so
that's pretty good.
Back to flowers. So I got a funny story, and it wouldn't have been funny at the time, but it's funny now. Like most good stories is, and I hope this is a good story. I visited the Philippines, and I saw these flowers in the hotels, and they were just beautiful. So I asked people, what kind of flower is that? And I went to a local grocery store and bought flower seeds and brought them back to Japan.
Okay.
Kind of find out that's illegal.
Yeah.
Now, the statute of limitations, I hope, is up because that was like 30 years ago.
All right.
But I tried to grow them on my balcony in Yokohama, and nothing happened. So, and then I showed a friend. I'm like, hey, by the way, I got these seeds. He's like, that's not in Japanese. And it's got like, on the back, it's got like Tagalog and stuff. And he's like, where'd you get these? I said, oh, in the Philippines. He's like, don't tell anybody. It's like, oops. So do you ever deal, and by the way, don't say anything that'll get you in trouble. Have you ever dealt with like importing flowers?
Not myself, no.
Okay.
Because these days, the flower shops usually do that.
Okay.
Yeah. What flower was it from the Philippines? Did you ever find out?
I have such a bad memory for those things. Yeah.
No, because a lot of at the moment, a lot of flowers from Australia are imported to Japan. And so in the flower arrangements, we'll use a lot of Australian species. So I think that these days you mostly don't have to do that.
Okay.
I would say like 20, 30 years ago, there would be less variety.
Yeah.
But nowadays, with the international market, pretty much all the import happens legally with the flowers. I've never had to do that.
So if you go to an actual shop that's licensed and did all the importing paperwork, then you're fine walking around with that Australian flower. Right?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
Totally. Yeah. Like it's all been passed through inspections and all that.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
No worries about that. So,
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So, and the reason I'm interested in this, I just visited a town called Kawazu. It's in Shizuoka, and the cherry blossoms bloom there first.
Yeah.
Probably. I don't want to say definitely, but usually. And so when I post on social media, like Instagram, people say like, no, Tracy, I think you mean plum blossoms. It's too early for cherry blossoms. I'm like, no, these are no, they're too dark. Well, they're darker and they bloom in February. In fact, they're gone already because
this
it
past
rained.
weekend was the height.
It was the peak. I got some good videos. I'll put a link right there. And Kawazu cherry blossoms. And people always tell me, like, no, those aren't cherry blossoms. They're too dark. It's too early. And every year, and by the way, these are Japanese people telling me this. So Kawazu is a hidden gem in Japan. Now, Yoyogi Park also has Kawazu Sakura.
Yeah.
I think it becomes Kawazu Sakura.
Yeah.
When you say it, right? Yoyogi Park also has them. I think there's somewhere, the Imperial Palace. They have like multiple varieties of different cherry blossoms, like one tree.
Yeah, even in Nakameko, they have some along the street.
They do, okay.
And there's a kind of popular stretch of, it's like next to the road, but near Yokosuka and Miura, there's a stretch of Kawazu cherry blossoms along with the, I think, goldenrod. That's a yellow flower, so they bloom at the same time. So it's a beautiful scene, but then if you turn the camera over this way, it's the road.
By the way, that's why my cherry blossom videos have music. Because there's road, there's cars, there's people, wind. It sounds like you got a paper bag, like crunching, right? It's terrible. And then an ambulance will come by and dogs bark and kids and people randomly yell stuff like, hey, over here. And like,
Yeah.
So That's why my cherry blossom videos have music
Yeah.
instead of the sound. In fact, I made one. Sorry, this is way too much about me, but I made one called the Kawazu Cherry Blossom Walk, where I walk through the cherry blossoms. And I took like a Hollywood studio. By the way, every single sound in that is fake.
Really?
From the footsteps to the people talking to the sound of the river was
Really?
all put in there in post. And people say like, oh, and I learned how to do surround sound,
Okay.
right, in Final Cut, which a lot of people prefer Adobe, but I use Final Cut because I'm a Mac guy. I got it to where the people walking to the right side of my camera, you hear them walk past you in the right ear. And people say, wow, that was like the best. I feel like I'm there. I'm like, well, you're not. And it's all fake.
Yeah, Kawazu cherry blossoms are nice because they actually have like a darker color to them. Because I just saw someone recently kind of complain, it's like, March again, and all the cherry blossoms photos will be popping up, and they're always oversaturated because they're not that pink. And then, but everyone's videos and pictures are very pink.
Yeah. In fact,
I'm guilty.
Yeah. Oh, guilty as charged. In fact, you might have seen on X yesterday or the day before, I posted, here's the obligatory oversaturated photo.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I posted the real photo and the oversaturated. And I think it's just this internet thing is, you can't have a ramen challenge where you have like one bowl of ramen. You got to eat 100 bowls of ramen. You got to do it all extreme. So there is, and this is why I think Ikebana is so cool. There is a trend going back to authentic on YouTube and social media.
Really?
Where, there's and I can't even think of his name, but I just saw an interview with a young, maybe college age bodybuilder, where he just vlogs with his camera, and he doesn't even make a thumbnail. It's just like, hey, me at the gym.
Back to the early days of YouTube.
Yeah. And he's just like, he's lifting weights, and he's really, muscular, and he doesn't do anything crazy. He's not jumping off of buildings or none of that crazy stuff. No reactions, no pranks. It's just me at the gym talking about, okay, here's what I eat, and here's how much I lift every day. And he has, like, I want to say millions of subscribers.
So it's connecting to like back to like
just
reality almost.
Real, unscripted, all that. I was going to mention to you, because you said before you had done like the typical, hygiene in Japan, YouTube, here's me having this or that. And, have you thought about doing Ikebana YouTube?
Yeah, a lot of my friends have said, why don't you do Ikebana YouTube? And I was like, yeah, I probably should. And maybe I will one of these days. I probably should do it. I'm like, yeah. Because I think after a couple of years in Japan, that kind of enthusiasm doing that kind of YouTuber stuff before YouTubers existed got a bit old. And I'm like, well, I just can't pretend to be that Genki. That's not me. Just to be like, hey. But yeah, doing the Ikebana on YouTube has definitely been on my mind, and people have recommended it. So I kind of actually just have to do that. I'm a pretty low-tech person, so those kind of things take me a while to get to, because
we should talk later, because I'm actually helping a couple people with their channels.
Okay.
And there's a pretty low bar for entry. Like you already have the knowledge, right? And there's a pretty low bar for entry. I mean, you can make a video on your phone and upload that. Or, like I said, I'm helping a couple people with their YouTube channels. And also Rumble, which is a kind of a competitor to YouTube.
Okay.
And it was started as kind of a response to some people got banned from YouTube for things they said. And so somebody went off and took a lot of money, started another service. And then there are a lot of people on there that it's like less filtered and less produced. So there's There's that.
Because I have seen people on YouTube doing Ikebana and stuff, and their editing is also pretty minimal to the point where it's like it's kind of too long. It's
Yeah.
like a little editing would be good. So yeah, I definitely should get into doing that. But
Maybe even YouTube Shorts to start with, right? I mean, YouTube created YouTube Shorts to compete with TikTok, right? And they're less than 60 seconds. Very low production value. My most viewed YouTube Shorts took about 30 seconds to film, 5 minutes to edit, because you put in the subtitles. If you can even use AI to, but people
right,
have to
yeah.
have the text on the screen, right? It has to pop up on the screen,
Yeah.
or they'll just go to the next one.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
So, and that's kind of a thing. But I've got a template for Shorts where it's vertical. You put in the text, you show the video, and it's like 15 seconds. And so the two videos I think is Dr. Pepper in Japan. Can you find Dr. Pepper? And it took 15 seconds to film. I walked up to the machine. I got home. I took the same microphone I'm using for this. I said, people say you can't find Dr. Pepper in Japan. Well, I found it. That's it.
Yeah.
One take.
It's like TikTok.
Right. Put that in the computer. Put up the titles on the screen. Upload it. I didn't even think about when to upload. Now YouTube tells you when your subscribers are online.
Oh, does
It's
it?
the best time to upload.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, you got to get to a certain number of subscribers first. But if you say, okay, everybody's online Saturday, so I will publish this and
That's
schedule
the
it.
way to do it, yeah.
Boom. Because the first 48 hours is like critical for
yeah.
But that was maybe 5-10 minutes of work, and I got like 5,000 views.
I like recently read something on Twitter or X that it's always the case where something takes you like 30 seconds to do. Almost always like has more views than you put like a lot of hard work into it. It's like 30 views versus like 30,000. That's always the case.
That's something I've complained about. I've taken some where I took an hour to edit it. I went through my whole library to find the perfect music. Like, which 10-second soundbite of music perfectly defines this video?
Yeah.
But then the other ones that are just like very low effort, but it's hit and miss.
Oh yeah, because I made some Instagram reels. Like every once in a while, I'll make one, and what you think is going to work and be popular, it never is. And like this
You never know.
silly thing that you post always like does way better than your what you really want. So,
And then the thing is, I found out it's so random because if there's a holiday and people are not watching YouTube that day, then you're not going to get any
it's
views, no
lost.
matter how amazing
Yeah,
it is, right? Or Mr. Beast could release a video that day, everybody's watching that, and they're not even going to get to yours, right? Or there could be a major event in the world and everybody's watching the news. They're not going to look for, So a lot of it's out of your control, but back to the point, though, I think Ikebana tube, whatever you want to call it, right?
This might be the push to get me to do that.
I hope so, yeah. And I would be totally willing to work on that with you.
Oh, thank you.
Make a couple videos for you, see, because I got the equipment. I got all the stuff. I love doing it. I've made videos for other people. Didn't even take credit. And they uploaded them and got views.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to start that then.
Yeah. And
no more excuses.
Yeah, take it on, yeah. Like I said, very low bar to entry, but I got all the equipment. So let's talk about that later offline and like get some content, upload them, see how we work together, and then also, if you like doing it, because it is work.
It takes time.
It takes time, and then see if there's a good response. You never know because, like I said, you could upload on a Japanese holiday when nobody's watching.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So, you can get one that has 10,000, a million views first time, or 5 views.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But let's talk about that offline. That'll be fun.
Yeah. Okay.
It'll be a lot of fun. Yeah.
I promise I will do that.
So, anything else about Ikebana? So you're actually touching flowers with your hands. That's something not everybody does.
Yeah, I think, especially when teaching like children, Ikebana. And some of those are the most magical moments is they don't have a lot of contact with nature these days, at least in the city. Living in the countryside, sure, but living in the city, and again, flowers are usually for looking at, it's not for touching. So having the opportunity to actually touch a branch and a flower, and then most people are just scared to bend it or break it, especially like
I would be.
some branches do just you like snap and break them, and it's like as long as they're 30% connected, you're fine. And it depends on the type of wood and the branch, whether that'll be whether it's going to fall off or not, or which flowers can bend and which flowers can't bend, and then there's the first step of hesitation. But I usually say like, oh, the flowers are dead. Like we've killed them. These are dead flowers, but now it's our job to bring them back to life, and through our artistic expression, give new meaning and give new life for these flowers. Is not to waste them, and then you can see the creativity flow once they're over that hurdle, and how they can change the height and bend the leaves, and sometimes just only use parts of the flower, and then really seeing that connection with nature. I think that's what people really crave. I mean, they crave social connection, they crave connection with nature. And then I've had, like, last year was my best comment ever, was this 8-year-old who said, this is better than Minecraft. And I was like, what? I'm like, I'll take it. I'm done. Like, I can retire. Like, when you said this is better than Minecraft, because it's been so popular over the years. But the fact that this boy said that, I was like, I'm good. This is good. Nothing's going to top this. So that was a really happy moment. And just, and all the parents have come back and said, wow, they just really enjoyed working with flowers, which is really surprising to them because, again, we don't usually work with flowers.
Yeah. And like, I've recently got back into grounding, and I don't know if like touching a flower is the same, but like grounding, like you're supposed to take your shoes off and walk in the dirt or the grass, right? Yeah. I'll do it at the beach if I'm, at the beach, but I don't think people touch nature very much in Tokyo or Yokohama. Like, I just don't.
Yeah, touch a tree once in a while, maybe. But again, you play in parks, but like often, like the grass will be corded off. Like, don't step on the grass.
Don't step on the grass.
Like, and really, like really special trees have like the little fence around them. Like, don't touch this tree. So yeah, I think it's less and less to actually be in nature, going to those wild parks within the wilderness, or like the foraging parks, or the mountains. Is less and less. And then,
yeah, I mean there is a culture of hiking, stuff like that, outdoors culture, camping culture. But so what I'll do is, since it's cold, or like it's cold in Tokyo, I'll just, when I go by a tree, I'll just touch the tree.
Yeah, sometimes I do that too. Yeah. Like I just last week when hiking up Takao-san.
Yeah, I saw that on.
Yeah, and I did see some people hiking, and I chose the non-popular path, like not the one that's just pavement up to the top. And so I could be in nature, and again, people are walking in it and absorbing the nature, which is really nice. But again, besides touching a tree, you're not like grabbing things and figuring out how they work and how they feel. So, again, being in nature is great, but it's different from actually manipulating it.
Oh, yeah. So did you see the waterfall there?
Yeah.
They make a big deal out of it. So if we saw the same one, so I did a video where I hiked up Mount Takao, and I didn't really know how to do a hiking video, so it's not that great, but it was fun. I got up to the part where they had, like, there's a monkey show, which I didn't really know how to feel about that.
I passed that part.
Yeah. Well, I know how I felt about it. I don't think that humans or animals should be in cages, but that's another topic. But monkeys are cute as hell, though. Yeah. They just shouldn't be in cages.
I mean, wild monkeys are less cute just because you're like,
they're wild animals.
They can rip off your face.
Dude, I was in Bali, and they tell you when you check into the hotel, don't leave your window open. Or don't leave the sliding glass doors open. And don't approach the monkeys because they are wild animals. Sure enough,
someone does it.
A tourist goes out there. She's like, "Oh, the cute little monkey." And she walks toward it, and it hissed at her like, and she jumped back, and I was like, "I told you." I tried to tell her, like, don't approach them.
Yeah,
they're wild animals. Like, this is not a cartoon. You know? But so hiking, I did the hiking video, and Takao was great. But before I went there was a lot of stuff online about the waterfall. It's so amazing. When I came down, it was like not that big.
No, it's not. It's not at all.
But it's still beautiful.
It is, yeah. But like, it's not. It's only like maybe 10 meters at most, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was when I was there. It was a slight stream because it was like autumn.
Ah, okay.
You know, so you're not getting the runoff.
Yeah.
But there's a place in Shizuoka. If you go to Kawazu and then go up the canyon to a place called Amagi, it's people who've been there recognize that there's a corkscrew road.
Past that, yeah.
Did you? Okay, if you've been there, okay, you know where Amagi is then. Around there's a place called Seven Falls.
Yeah, I've been there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That hike is tremendous. That's a beautiful hike, and oh my gosh.
Yeah.
One of the best.
Yeah.
It's not really a hike.
It's really good. I mean, no. Maybe going down the waterfalls, all those steps, but no, it's a beautiful area.
It's more of a walk with a slight gradation. You know, as you get older, like, no, that was a hike. I talked to somebody younger, they're like, no, that's a walk. Like, okay. So, because I joked, I didn't joke. I said, I'd like to go hiking to see the Seven Falls. They're like,
Hiking?
Hiking? Okay, old man. But that's a great place. There's also a place called Joden-taki, which is the same area. If you drive over the mountain from Amagi toward Mishima,
Okay, yeah.
right? Joden Falls is an absolutely beautiful waterfall, and I really recommend that. So, but we're going back to where people don't get a lot of contact with nature, right? Is Ikebana a way to remedy that?
I think it's one of the ways. It's definitely because the essence of Ikebana, the principles, at least in my school, I don't want to speak for other schools of Ikebana, but the Sogetsu school, when creating Ikebana, it's a connection between yourself, nature, and whatever you believe to be the heavens. So there's a spiritual component to it as well.
I was going to ask about that. So is it, I don't know a lot about Japanese religion, but is it like related to Shinto?
I would say more Buddhism, because Ikebana started from the temples.
Okay. My ignorance there.
So the Buddhist monks would make flower arrangements for Buddha. So that's kind of how it began. And then, again, it trickled from the Buddhist monks doing it to the samurai class. And then the samurais would do it, and that's how they have the spot in the home where they will have the flowers and the scroll and I always forget the Japanese word. It's taka something. I should know it, but I'm really bad at names. And so in the home you have that spot in the Japanese traditional house where you celebrate the seasons, and you have like the flowers and the scroll and the change of seasons and all of that. So that became popular in the houses there, and it went from the samurai class to the merchant class. And then from the merchant class to kind of high society to eventually where it just got around to everybody. And it did the gender switch where it used to be only men, then only women, and then back to it's like not half and half, but it's more women, but a lot of men are doing Ikebana again. So it's I guess again seen as more like to some people maybe like a female art, but like there's a lot of men who do it as well. So, but there's like that stereotype, and that's how I had it before I first started. I thought I'd walk into a room full of like Oba-chan, all these old ladies. But when I was taking classes in Yokohama, like it was a really big mix of young people, men and women, foreigners and Japanese. So it was really nice.
So it was interesting when I grew up, and I grew up in the Intermountain West, like Utah, and then Idaho, and then Nevada. And flowers were something like guys would go to the store and just buy them for their wife or girlfriend, right? And I don't know if it's like a Neanderthal way of doing it or Luddite way, but like red roses. And nobody I knew the names of flowers, right? And I came to Japan. It was so surprising because I was taking a walk with a Japanese colleague. This is in the 90s. We were walking through the neighborhood. We were in this place where there were a lot of homes around. We walked through the neighborhood during lunch, and he would point out all the flowers. And I noticed some Japanese people know the seasons. They're so in tune with the seasons where I was living in Southern California before I came here, and
It's
so
one season.
yeah, like one season, right? And it was very interesting, like going to the store and looking for oranges, and somebody would say they're not in season. But I'm used to LA where everything's in season 24/7, like 365, right? I want avocados,
Yeah, eating seasonally was a definitely adjustment
right?
when coming, and I definitely feel, in Canada, America, flowers are for giving or for celebrations, but I think in Japan, there's always festivals and there's always events to celebrate the different flowers and different
Yeah.
seasons, and I've really kind of my yearly calendar is really based on flowers now. So I'm like, all right, I'm like, this is the time of the year for wisteria, and up next to these flowers, and then in July it's the lotus, and then I'm like, okay, in February I know it's close to spring because the plum blossoms are out. And so like I definitely my year goes by like which flowers are in bloom, and I'm like, all right. And I'm like, it's plum blossoms, cherry blossoms, tulips, wisteria. I'm like, this is how I go through like my year.
It's wisteria season, right?
Yeah. So, and then again, it's not just women, flowers of women.
Yeah.
Everyone really appreciates flowers and looking at flowers in Japan. So it's really nice, and that's a huge cultural difference.
Yeah, it's really different. It's like sushi. If you go to a sushi restaurant in the spring, you're going to get a different menu than the fall.
Yeah.
Right. If you go to the place that doesn't have a menu, right, or prices,
Yeah.
and you get they call it the omakase menu, right? I've only gone when somebody else was paying, but a real sushi master will be able to tell you which fish is not only good that season, but that week. And then you shouldn't serve it with this type of seafood this type of seaweed because that wouldn't make sense, right? And a real sushi master will be able to tell you that we're serving this today because, and give you 10 reasons why. And then there's the, I want to say, nobori and kudari, like going up and going down. What's katsuo?
That's like a type of tuna.
It's a fish, right?
Yeah.
Katsuo is a fish, and nobori katsuo and kudari katsuo are different because as they're going up the coast, they're going to taste different than when they're swimming down the coast. And I didn't know this until a sushi master explained this to me.
I just learned this.
Right?
Yeah.
And he explained like in certain types of the year they're going to be more fatty and oily. And other times of the year they're going to be leaner and have less oil. I was like, I didn't even know that. So I find because Japan tries to be, well, we import a lot of food, but I think Japan tries to be very food independent, in some ways. Maybe not.
I think it's a whole different story, but yeah, I can tell you stories about like the food tourism and where do the ingredients actually come from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
But I do think the image is there, yeah, for sure.
But it seems like the regular Japanese consumer knows the seasons better than a lot of other people. This is what I'm trying to get at. It's like,
well, food tourism is a huge thing here. So I think you're used to like the seasonal food, and also each prefecture has their food.
Yeah.
So food's always on the minds, basically, and I think food is celebrated as well.
It is.
Which really that brings me up to an interesting point where Ikebana did used to be very seasonal, and to a point it really still is. It's very seasonal. What materials are available. But then over the years, with like globalization, the import of flowers from different countries, greenhouses, the technology, of course the tradition is still there. Of course we celebrate which flowers are in season, and certain festivals have dedicated flowers and trees and branches to them. But we're no longer limited to working within the seasons. So you don't actually have to worry about, when making Ikebana, you don't necessarily need to worry about or use the flowers that are in season anymore. So there's a time and a place. So if you're going to celebrate and make flowers for the upcoming like Hinamatsuri, you're going to want to use tulips and peach blossoms. That's the image for Hinamatsuri, for the Girls Doll Festival. But the same, doing a weekly flower arrangement, you could use flowers from different countries and different seasons. I think we're talking about how we have a lot of Australian flowers imported in Japan. And again, like I was working with cherry blossoms, like I think 3 weeks ago, because the greenhouses and the flower shops have
Ah.
their own cherry blossoms ready to bloom.
And do I have this right? Do they bloom based on the temperature?
Basically, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
because when the Kawaza cherry blossoms bloom, and people tell me I'm wrong, those aren't cherry blossoms. But it seems like as the weather changes, the blossoms bloom. So is that what causes it?
Yeah, generally for like the gardens in Japan, gardens, flower parks, they'll have this one tree, and usually there's a sign by it. They look at this tree to tell when the cherry blossoms or that type of flower is going to bloom. So there's this one tree that they depend on, and I don't know how they decide it, but they just know like when this tree starts to change, well, then that like cherry blossom season's coming. But there's like this one tree that's always a bit earlier than the rest, and whether that's just by happenstance, I'm not sure. But it's really interesting to know like this is the tree that when its leaves start to change color, we know that the season's coming. Yeah.
One thing I forgot to get this year, there's a tree in Kawaza called Genboku. Genboku is the original tree from which all the others came. And there's, I forget how many hundreds of trees there are along the river, but that's a big old tree. And it's been there, I don't know how many decades. Forgot to get a video of that. But that's like their, what's the Groundhog on Groundhog Day? Puxtahani Will or something like that, whatever his name is.
Something like that, yeah.
I'm going to get it wrong. People are going to give me comments, whatever. But that's kind of like their canary in the coal mine type of, that's their tree.
Yeah, so often, depending on which gardens you go to, take a look next time. There'll be like a little plaque that'll say like, this is the tree to watch.
I got to check that out. That's cool.
Yeah, it's
now
really
I learned
interesting.
But it is very interesting when I was here in the 90s, traveling was so different. We didn't have smartphones or really even widespread internet. So, and there was no way a Japanese business would put information online, right? But you would have to go to the bookstore and get a guidebook.
Oh, yeah.
And they would have pictures of the inn, the hot bath, the hot springs or the onsen or whatever, and the flowers that bloom there and the local food.
Yep, the Lonely Planet guide.
So when you say food tourism, is that what you mean? Like, we're going to go to this city and eat this food?
And that's still very strong today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's that gives me a good YouTube video.
Well, because I used to live in Shikoku, in Takamatsu, which is the udon prefecture of Japan, and I don't think it was permanent, but for like a while they changed the name of Takamatsu Station to like Udon Station. But like the identity of Kagawa is like udon, and like I spent 5 years there, so like that udon is still in me. So like I always crave udon. I like it better than ramen or soba. Like that was really pounded into me for 5 years, and like salarymen eat udon like every day for lunch, and then you know how like. We have the betsubara for desserts. Like in Kagawa, they always say, "Oh, we have a third stomach. There's food, desserts, and udon." Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah. So, and then each prefecture has their food, and again, gift giving in Japan, like the summer gifts, or anytime you have gifts, like especially summer or spring, a lot of friends. We will exchange fruits from different prefectures. So a friend from Okayama will send like a box of the shine muscat grapes, and then maybe a friend from Kochi will send the yuzu. So like there's a big they're my favorite. But yeah, so a lot of gift giving and exchange happens through the seasonal and prefectural fruits as well and food.
Do you like yuzu koshio?
Oh yeah, I love it.
I've given that to friends. I got mixed reactions. Some people, like, I don't know if it's a love-hate thing, but hit and miss, whatever. But I had a friend who was like, I'll give it a shot. I got an email later, and he's like, dude, how do I get some more of that stuff? Like, the thing, so each prefecture has different, like, foods, right? So the mikan, right? I guess in Hokkaido, they don't grow mikan because it's cold. So a woman visited the Kanto area and took back a box of mikan to her family, and they thought, did you move to Tokyo and get rich? Because in one prefecture you can pick them up on the side of the road, but in another prefecture those are like worth their weight in gold. So I haven't traveled a lot recently, but it makes sense because when you go to Hong Kong, you want to have Peking duck or you want to have this or that, right? The fruit in Hong Kong I found was amazing. When you go to Korea, you're going to try kimchi. You're going to have
Yeah.
if you eat meat, you're going to definitely eat steak in Korea, right? Kobe beef, right? Bear and Yamanashi,
Then yeah,
right?
yeah.
The kuma hoto. Hoto is like a noodle and it's
Yeah,
hand
I love
cut.
hotel.
Oh,
Yeah, and I've never ordered it, but I've seen the bear on the menu. But,
yeah. There's a place in Jimbocho, and I don't know where the word comes from. It's probably probably from French, but they call it gibier in Japanese. It means
Okay.
wild meat. So that would
Oh.
mean bear,
Yeah.
venison, snake, or whatever. Is very popular in Japan. A friend of ours has a meat packing plant in a little bit south of here who was an exterminator because the not many people own weapons in Japan, right? So there was a guy who was a hunter, and people would ask him like, "Hey, our rice field is getting decimated by wild boar, or our cabbage farm is getting decimated by deer. Could you come cull them?" And so he would do that and then sell the meat to the dog food plant.
Ah, yeah.
And people say, "Why are you doing that? It's delicious." So he tried wild boar, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is delicious." And then he tried the venison. "Oh, this is delicious." So he, instead of selling it off, he started processing it and selling steaks and sausages.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
I bet.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
That's funny because I just saw a friend of mine woke up the other day this week to wild boars in their front lawn.
I saw that on Twitter. It's like,
and I was like, Shishihoto. Yeah.
Oh my! And it's there are some towns in the Kanto region. Kanto meaning like eastern Japan, Tokyo area, right? Chiba, Yokohama, etc. There's some towns in the Kanto region that are outside of Tokyo where the wild boar population is higher than the human population.
Really? I didn't know that.
Believe it or not. So when I did a video about bears in Japan, people are like, "Oh, come on. There aren't any bears in Japan." Like, yeah, there are. There are, because when people think of Japan, they think of Tokyo, Osaka, right? They think of this concrete jungle. But a lot of people don't know that 30% of Japan is inhabitable. 70% is mountainous and soft mountains. You can't live.
Landslides.
Yeah, landslides. People always ask me, like, Japan's so advanced. Why do they have these natural disasters? Well, first of all, they're on a fault line. Japan is a fault line, or actually two that meet in the middle of Japan, and then the mountains are soft. So if you get rain, the mountain just falls over, like it did in Atami a couple of years ago. Did you see that?
I remember that.
That was insane. People's videos of like houses just falling down the mountain.
Oh yeah, and I think last year there was a video of flood in Shizuoka and just like the river and just washing things away. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's great. For such an advanced country, they're really subject to the whims of nature.
I mean, an island, so
It's an island, yeah. So, switching gears here, you play the harp. Tell me more about that.
I mean, if we start at the beginning, like I said, I kind of go into things without thinking too much. So if something catches my fancy, like Ikebana, I'll just go into it and try it. Because, I have some friends who just really deliberate, like, oh, should I do this? It's going to, like, this is the time, and is it going to be any good? And I'm like, I don't really go through that process. So what happened is I had a dream one night that I was in space, naked, holding the harp. And then we just put my head against the bridge of the harp. And this, I can't describe it, but I can still hear it in my head. This kind of like celestial music, the most beautiful music I could think of. Not even think of, just experience. This was a dream. And then I was in university, I think the summer after my first year university. And, I woke up and I was like, that was a cool dream. And then after school that day, I opened up the local newspaper and there was an article on this couple in my province in Canada. And the husband makes harps and the wife teaches harp lessons. And I was like, I'm like, good enough. That's a sign. So I emailed them and I said, I would like to have a harp made. And 3 months later, I had my own harp. And I have previous musical experience through band and school. So she taught me the technique, but she's like, oh, your music theory is actually, more than mine. So just to do the technique and teach yourself. I'm like, all right. So that was back in university. So that's how that started. And I feel like through that step, like I used to play weddings, in the occasional wedding in Canada, and then I had a really sweet gig playing at the Lieutenant Governor's Mansion. There's not a lot of harpists back from where I'm from. I think there was three. So I would play at the Lieutenant Governor's Mansions for parties, which was nice. You just to sit in the corner and play, and sometimes people could come and talk to you, but mostly you're just playing. And I think through that experience and that kind of skill set led to opportunities. So when I started with the JET program to come to Japan, so I think having that kind of unique skill and experience definitely helped in the interviews. So when I applied, they would only choose 6 people from my province because it's based on population size. Not a lot of people from my province. So out of all the people who apply, they only choose 6, and I happened to be one of them. But in my interview, it just came up that I had made, I had the experience of making a CD and playing the harp, and like that's a skill that I can bring to Japan. So I felt like that helped me succeed in getting chosen to come to Japan. So it's interesting how you can look back on life and you can, life is probably random, but you can look back and you can make connections and you can make your own story out of it. Make with that what you will. But you can go back and see, like, oh, well, you know what? I joined karate in junior high school because one of my friends was too shy to try karate by themselves. So I went, all right. And we started karate together. And then a Japanese woman moved and joined the dojo. We became friends. And she's the reason why I came to Japan. So, like, it's just all these, like, coincidences where she didn't, like, set out to try and get me to move to Japan. But because I met her, but I wouldn't have met her if my friend was too afraid to try karate by himself. So like it's funny, you can go back and make all these connections and it's fun. Doesn't mean anything, who knows? But yeah, you can look back and say, well, this is this and this connects to this, and it's just kind of wild how things happen.
My dad's best friend grew up across the street from this guy, a Japanese guy. And so I thought it was normal that your dad's best friend would be a Japanese guy, right? And I'd ask other people, like, well, doesn't your dad have a Japanese friend? I thought everybody did, right? And they grew up across the street from each other. And crazy thing, they died the same weekend.
Really? Wow.
But in between, he was the best man for my dad, and my dad was his best man.
Really? Wow.
So, and I didn't realize this until one time I went home and they were hanging out together. I was living in Japan, and I went back to the States, and I ran into Don, my dad's best friend, Japanese guy, and I was like, Don, I grew up with you as basically part of our family. He was like an uncle or something. And I don't know if that got me interested. My grandparents, my grandfather retired from the railroad.
Okay.
And this is in the days where, like, we call them the greatest generation. He had been overseas for World War II, didn't see combat, but was buried with an American flag on his casket. I didn't even know, right, that he'd been in the military. Then my grandparents retired at that time where you could retire and travel the world. Right. So they're those, Americans with the white legs and shorts in Paris, talking real loud in English, right?
Yeah.
And this is when you had to get a stamp on your passport for each country. There was no EU, and there was no euro. So he'd come back and say, look at these francs, look at these Deutschmarks, look at this. They went to Russia when it was still the USSR.
Wow.
And they went to Mexico, and they went to all these crazy places. I think maybe that got me interested in traveling.
Okay. Yeah.
But I didn't want to wait till I was 65 to do it, right? So
yeah, I felt like myself.
Right? What time is it here?
Oh, it is 4:08.
Okay, we still
Yeah.
got like 50 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
We got till 5 o'clock.
All right. No, I think that growing up in my small city, like I never felt like I really belonged.
I get it.
And I did want to travel because my parents, again, were late in life travelers. They've been to Japan twice. And they've gone on some cruises, but a lot of that didn't happen until they retired or
Yep.
almost retire. So my first trip was to Greece on a school trip. That was the first time, and I was like, "Oh, this is great!" And I think that kind of also gave some momentum
Yeah.
that I want to learn about other cultures. So I'd always go to the culture nights at my university, and like I just want to learn, and again through food,
yeah.
always learning through food. Which I carry with me today still, yeah.
I don't think I follow on Instagram, but your Twitter has some really good pictures of food. And
Yeah.
this is why I have to stop looking at social media at night. Because people like you,
I usually post them late at night too.
right?
Yeah.
I see pictures of food, I'm like, oh, that looks so good. And you know the rest. So,
Yeah.
But your pictures of food are very good.
Thank you.
And I saw like 7 liters of chili?
Oh yeah.
What were you thinking? Was it really 7 liters of chili?
Oh, it was. Yeah, it was 1.8 gallons. Because I hate having to always have to convert between like metric and imperial. And living in Canada, like everything is measured between either metric and imperial. Just depends what it is. But what it is I'd always keep on going to the supermarket. And finding like ground beef like half off. I'm like, yes, I'm just gonna grab that, put it in the freezer. And it just got to the point where I'm like, gotta kind of use it. So I had like 4 pounds of ground beef in the freezer. I'm like, I kind of got to use it. So I was like, all right, I take all the ground beef. I'm like, okay, let's make the chili. And then by the time I finished, and I got the big pot, and because I knew this was gonna be big, but like it was up to the very top, and I was just like, all right. And so now instead of like 4 pounds of beef in the freezer, I have like 7 liters of chili in the freezer. But we're working on it.
Doesn't soup do that? Because I make soup in the winter.
Yeah.
There's a doctor in Azerbaijan who I believe he went to Harvard, and he put together a soup, and my home we call it POCC, pumpkin, onion, cabbage, and carrots.
Okay, didn't know that.
POCC, and it's called phytochemical soup. And he put this together because you can get these ingredients in any country, in any season. So to me, that's where, and what you do is you boil these 4 together, and then you drink some broth, and then you eat the soup. And after you have a bowl of that, then you can make curry with it, or you can make another dish. You can add meat, chicken, whatever. But I make POCC, especially in the winter, because if you leave it out, it doesn't get bad. In Japan during rainy season, you leave something on the counter for 5 minutes, it's going to spoil, right?
Oh yeah, I found out the hard way when I first moved here.
Right? And so, but I find with soup or stew, you think you're going to make a small pot,
Never.
and it's just like this expanding.
I have two.
It's out of
I have
control.
2 freezers. I need 2 freezers because, like for example, I still have Christmas cookies in the freezer because I always overshoot, and so when I have a dinner with friends over, I make sure there's enough food. But like making Christmas dinner, I make enough food probably for 20 people. Maybe there's 8 people, and so even after everyone knows to bring containers with them, so they just pack up all the food. But even after that, there's still more food to put in the freezer. Oh yeah, so I really go, and so I think I made about 200 cookies this Christmas. So, and then again, my friends would take them home. I took them to all the trainers in my gym. I'm like, have fun. I'm like, you're gonna hate me, but love me. But then I still have cookies in the freezer, and I just bring them out every time I have friends over. I'm like, sorry, they're Christmas cookies, but they're still good.
Take them out of the freezer. They're still good, yeah. Wow. That's something, so I don't have an oven. I don't have a microwave oven.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not I'm not worried about a death ray killing me or none of that crap. It's a space thing. I moved into a smaller place, and I was so proud of myself. I got the TV, the dresser, the refrigerator, and then a small shelf where I can put the coffee maker on top. That means there's no space for a microwave oven, so I got rid of it. Now I don't really miss it. It's funny. So, and I live alone most of the week. So she's traveling, so for work, but I will usually make enough for one meal.
I don't know how to do that. I have no idea how to do that.
Right?
Yeah.
I had to learn how to do that because in the States, there's the doggy bag, which they won't do in Japan.
No.
Can I take the rest of my
Very
steak home?
rarely. Very rarely.
Why?
Yeah.
But I learned how to buy and cook for one. It's hard, right? But I'll go to Hanamasa, which is the
Really popular.
what do they call it? Like almost like a restaurant supply store.
Kind of, yeah.
Gyom Supa, they call it, right? And they have grass-fed beef, and it's like 3 yen per gram. Whereas you go to a nice grocery store, it's going to be 8 yen. So a good steak is going to cost you $10, where at the same steak at Hanamasa is going to cost you $5.
Yeah.
So I'll get a whole shopping cart full of those for the week, and then some green veggies. That's what I eat. But I had to learn how to cook for one person, which can be hard.
Yeah, moving to Japan, I was used to cooking because I would cook for my family a lot of the nights. So cooking for 4 people who always went back for seconds. Versus moving to Japan and cooking for myself or cooking for 2 people, like it'd always be like. So I have pared down. I'm pretty good. I can cook for 2 people. Usually, if it's just by myself, it's like I will just eat a banana or like a protein shake or something, and not just cook. So, but I think one thing that people have commented on a lot, because I do post a lot of food photos, is like, oh, you take the time to. Like plate the food and present it nicely.
That's the difference. Yeah.
And even if it's just for myself, when I do cook for myself, I do that. And I don't know where that started from, but like scientifically, like well presented food tastes better. It is scientifically proven that you eat with your eyes.
True.
So that a well presented dish, and I think that's why people love Japanese food as well, because it's always presented beautifully, but well presented food is just tastier. And then also I heard from someplace, again I can't remember, but it's really like a form of self-love and self-care. Like take that time to make it nice for yourself, and people have busy lives, so priorities. But that's something I always do for myself, is even if it's for myself. And then that's why I think I ended up posting pictures. Well, I took the effort to make it look nice. I'm going to post online. But yeah, so making the effort to, and challenging yourself, because again, and since learning Ikebana for the past 8 years, part of the essence of Ikebana goes into all parts of your life, like how you decorate a room and how you see things and perspectives on nature, and then food as well. So like, what can I do with the food to make it look nice? So it's kind of like using the Ikebana to arrange your food as well.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. I worried about that. Like, I didn't know if you were like making a dinner for a group and just taking a picture of one plate, or this is your dinner and you took a picture and like.
Sometimes both. Yeah. It really, and then most people are like, I'll take a picture of food, and like often people are like, how can you eat so much food? I'm like, I'm actually not eating any of it. Like, it's like, because there's a lot of assumptions online. So it's like, that's so much food. I'm like, yeah, it's for 10 people.
Yeah.
Like, but I don't really say that I just post the picture. I don't give information behind it. So that's fun. A lot of assumptions people come from, like, oh my God, how can you eat that? Or like I post like at midnight this food post, and like, how can you eat so late at night? I'm like, I didn't eat that.
Just
but yeah, I think that food is an important part. And again, that was kind of a gateway for me how to learn about different cultures when living in a small city.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting that they talk about breaking bread, right? I think that's used in the translation of the Bible. When people break bread together, it's so I really enjoy eating with people. I mean, we're supposed to, right? We're supposed to eat with people.
There's that adage that sharing food makes it taste better.
Right?
Yeah.
It does. And looking at, so there's, I studied because I used to, more than now, I used to pack some extra pounds. And so I in one of my reading things that I did, my self-study, I learned that preparing your own food actually prepares the body to ingest it.
Oh, interesting.
Right? So the saliva, right, the body starts to prepare. And so if you have a pizza come to the door and you start eating, you've done no prep.
Oh,
Right.
I never thought of that.
And it's a kind of a shock to the body. Right? But if you cut the food, you cook the food, you plate the food, the body is preparing to receive the food. And I can't go through the whole scientific thing. Don't take health advice off of some dude on the internet like me. But that's what I read, is it prepares the body to ingest the food, is that prep time.
Well, it's just like eating with your hands, where some cultures believe like that connection, it makes it more tastier. And then from my hometown, East Coast Canada, the most popular thing happens is the kitchen party. So you have the first party, and then everything in East Coast Canada, every party ends up in the kitchen, and that's when you're just eating leftover food, or you just continue eating, and that's when the real conversations like really get started, and someone will break out into music in the kitchen, whether it be a violin or guitar. So like the kitchen party was just a big part of my growing up culture, and that no matter where in the house you started the party, you always ended in the kitchen. And then, again, it's with the food, it's with the connection with the people. And again, I think I mentioned earlier, those are the two big things. Well, no, maybe that's three big things, but like connection with nature, connection with people, and then food as kind of the universal connection.
Yeah. Interesting. So I think they don't really have this in Japan because, well, first of all, some apartments, like you have, like they call it the LDK, right? The living dining kitchen is all one room, right? So you don't end up in the kitchen, like you're in the kitchen. You start in the kitchen, But and a lot of people don't have home parties; they don't have the space. But where I grew up too, our social circle was majority family, and so when you cook together, right? Or it's a potluck where everybody brings a dish, right? And then you eat, and then the kids go play, and then the adults break off into their groups, the kids break off into their group, whatever. But it ended up in the kitchen where you're like, oh, there's just a bite of macaroni and cheese left over. Or somebody finished that. Or like, oh, we got to make room for the pies, so somebody finished off that, casserole, whatever, and the conversations in there I thought were a lot more intimate.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And there was a lot greater connection. Something I miss living in Japan is that where I live, it's barely big enough for one person, right? Sometimes there's two, sometimes there's one. I don't have people over.
I think and I think going back to a conversation we had before recording is I really made an effort, or started to make an effort this year to really try and bring people together. So with my homes, and it stems from back home in Canada, but always coming over to Japan, I never lost that, I guess, the talent that I have where I'm a host. I love to host. So even in the countryside with a 2-bedroom apartment, I have people staying over every weekend. I once had a whole new crew of jet teachers come, and they were experiencing some hard culture shock for the first weekend. So I had 8 people staying in my 2-bedroom apartment, and we had a schedule of, I make breakfast, we had a shower schedule, and then we all go to to the office for training and seminar, but just taking care of people. So any home that I've had, I've always set it up, and difficulty, but I always have it clean and ready for unexpected guests to just drop over. So at my homes, and it could be tricky in Japan, but my home is always open for people who need it, and I love to have people over. I love to have book clubs and gatherings and food, of course. And so every house that I've had rented, and my house now, like one requirement is always a guest room. So. And again, I know like a lot of people don't have the space, but that was a priority in my life. So my guest room, I try to make it versatile because you don't always have guests. So my guest room is kind of like a relaxation room / drying laundry sometimes. So always having a nice kitchen, having a guest room are some of the requirements, and just having my room or my house ready to have guests and not trying to do that last minute cleaning. Because that's a lot of impetus before guests come over. You're always scrambling to clean. So as you're getting older, just trying to have that balance where you don't have to rush to clean. So I would have neighbors come over. I gave them tickets to my Ikebana exhibition. They came to say thank you, and it was Christmas time, and they're like, "Oh, look at the wreath and stuff." I'm like, "Oh, I have some trees up in the house. Why don't you come on inside?" So
wow,
it's not the Japanese culture, but it's my culture that I try to extend. And my neighbors' grandchildren, I'm like, "Come into the backyard and open the gate, come into the backyard, anytime you want to play, and take my dogs. Yeah, play with my dogs. It's cool." They don't accept that invitation, but I'll keep accepting it.
Sure.
And yeah, come on over, it's fine. And just trying to be open and welcoming. And I know that culture isn't here, but again, just trying to create that. And so then, I have the old lady neighbors coming in to look at Christmas trees in my house, and they're like, wow, because my house is set up, again, to have guests over. It's not set up to, a lot of houses can be cluttered and not exactly ready for guests. So I think that's just an important thing for me. And I always have the Christmas parties and all that. So I think that's just part of the culture that's in me from home, but I continue to this day. And in 2024, I've just been trying to get people offline together to meet more, because the not number one complaint, but a big complaint about living in Japan or Tokyo is the loneliness and isolation. So you're surrounded by millions of people, but you still feel alone. And just trying to bring that offline, online, and growing that community, because connections are so important in Japan. Word of mouth and connections, they really help. But businesses, but also socially and emotionally, mentally. So
just a support network.
So I've been kind of focusing on that, because that's what people need, and that's what we're used to having. And there's a few people who are just natural hosts or organizers. So I'm kind of working with other people like that, and we're just trying to get consistent events going on, and just having people come, open it, please come, join. And it's really nerve-wracking to invite strangers into your home or meeting up with strangers. It's I have a book club where I would literally have strangers I've never met come, and you just have to get ready. Well, maybe we're not going to match or mesh. That's going to be okay. But it's only for a few hours.
I found meetup.com to be fascinating, but it is very random. There's a YouTube meetup. There's a photographer's meetup that I join, both of those, and I found the people to be great. And especially both of them are great. The photo walk is amazing.
I've seen posts for events for that.
And it's the organizer's a really cool guy. The models who come are so easy to work with. The other photographers, I'm a total noob, even though I threw out the money for the camera, but it doesn't mean you know how to use it. So people are always helpful. They're like, "Oh, is that this model?" Okay, over here, that's the setting. Blah, 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 blah. And then you take 100 times better picture that day because this person helped you. But and then we share photos. We share "Oh, hey, this photo, I didn't get the light correct. Is there a way to fix that in post or whatever?" So it's really nice where even though we do have these so-called online, so-called communities, I think it's better to take it offline and meet people in person sometimes.
Because again, it's easy to misunderstand what people say or the tone, and you kind of forget that these are real people with feelings, and everyone says you never know what's going on in a person's life. Meeting up in person. So just trying to online community is really important, but also an offline community as well. So you can have the balance between that.
And it's interesting. So people who know me in person know there's several sides to my personality, where I'm the romantic, you talked about Ikebana harp. I just jumped in feet first or whatever, just all in, without really sitting down and write a list of pros and cons. It's I'm all in now. I'm the same way with things. Even coming to Japan the first time, didn't really think about it. I want to go to Japan. Okay, how do I get a ticket? Let's go. That was it. But there's also the sarcastic side of me, right? Like the dark humor, right? Where I also like talking about this or that. It's like, I'm into YouTube, I'm into podcasting, I'm into several other things. People who met me in person, now that they know the context, if they see a joke on Twitter, it's like, oh, okay, that's the sarcastic side of him, or whatever. That's the dark humor coming out, But people who never met me in real life be like, I thought you just talked about how fun it is to live in Japan. Now you're saying something that doesn't
Yeah.
Oh no. But every once in a while you see these people, and I think it's part of being an online creator, because they're the highs and the lows, and the pendulum swinging. Like, you're popular one day, and then the next day you get a comment. Like, I got comments before where somebody said, like, "Oh, you think you're so smart, you have to tell the world what you think." It's like, and actually in the video I'd said, like, "Hey, I might have missed something, so if I did, tell me in the comments below." I always try. It's weird to say I try to be humble because it sounds like a humble brag, but I do try to be, because I often, and we talked about this especially on X, is like, I don't really come out and say, like, I believe this and it has to be this way, because in my own personal life I've been wrong, or I've changed my mind. And I don't want people to get a snapshot of, like, oh, he believes this, because when they meet me 2 years later in real life, it might be like, they say, like, oh, I really like what you said about, like, I'm like, no, I don't feel like that anymore.
Yeah, people grow and change,
right?
But online it can stay with you, and there's a mentality where people don't change.
Yep.
So I can get that. Luckily, posting food and flowers, I don't get a lot of controversial
Can't
comments.
get a lot of flack for that.
And I always invite people. I'm like, this is when you make an arrangement, you're supposed to name it, and so I'll name it. But I'm always saying, like, I'm open to other people's interpretations. I'm not going to get offended. Of like, this is what I think it does. This is what it means to me. But if it means does something different to someone else, I'm like, that's great, because that's art. There is no right answer. And if you're just trying to say, no, this is what it is.
Yep.
But it's open to everyone in interpretation. So luckily, I don't get.
You don't put that out, so you're probably not going to get it back. And if you do, for me, it's water off a duck's back. I get a comment, I'm like, because when you do make videos, sometimes you're going to get a hater, and it's just so random. So there's a feature to mute them, and they don't know they've been muted. They can keep posting bad, stupid comments. Nobody else sees them. Only they see them.
Yeah.
So I just let them. Okay, go for it.
I don't use the block button. I use the mute button.
That's a little bit of an extreme option, right? And then because they can make another account and do the same thing again. So you don't want to go to battle with a troll, because they have
a lot of time on their hands.
Endless amounts of free time.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people, unfortunately, who get a lot of trolls, and it's simply for being a woman, or simply for being a person of color. Cool. I personally, I don't have to deal with that. I have the privilege of not having to deal with that side of it. And it really, unfortunately, really sucks that people have to deal with it just for being who they are.
It's not cool, It's people should just be nice.
That's ideal, and I think that's the side of getting things offline. So bringing together people, because once you're together, you see the humanity in each other. You're not going to just be saying these things to people's faces.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, there's a whole genre of videos where people get their comeuppance. Where online troll tries it in real life. See what happens. It's always like somebody yelling at somebody in the supermarket, and the other guy walks over and punches. I don't recommend that. Okay? Don't do that. In fact, I recommend not doing it.
A lot of them are fake as well.
Yeah, a lot of it's set up. There's a couple what they call them prank videos that were total setup. And when they get discovered, it ruins their credibility. So, I don't do any of that. Sensational crap. So to me, that's like, I'd rather have something we talked about, evergreen content. So I'd rather do that. But I forget where I lost my train of thought. But I think people should just be nice. And I do. Here's where I was going. I made a comment in a video about learning Japanese, especially the writing system. It's so complicated, right? And I made a joke because I tell people, if you want to study Japanese, it's not especially in that video, but if you want to study Japanese, it's going to help your brain. It can possibly even, not a doctor, but it can help you, like, stave off, like, dementia and Alzheimer's, right?
Yep.
Being bilingual, they say that people who are bilingual have less incidence of Alzheimer's, right?
Yeah.
I hope that's true. But I make the joke. I said, okay, everybody, if you want to study Japanese, you should totally do it. But eventually AI is going to make it unnecessary. And I got so many comments about that. Why do you say that? And I hope people don't see me as an expert, but I've been here since 1990 on and off. And I do speak Japanese. I know a bunch of kanji, a couple thousand kanji. And I thought, oh no, maybe people took that seriously,
Yeah, it's hard to joke on the internet.
It's really hard, right?
Yeah.
And I do it kind of as a deadpan too, where I've made a couple of jokes in my videos where I'm not sure if it came across that was a joke. But
Yeah, again, that's the thing that the tone online,
Right.
It's hard to read, and often, just people in general, like society, you go for the worst take first.
Yes.
That's like just like human nature, kind of. You really have to train yourself and have like that, the compassion, like basically a compassionate system to train yourself to think in a more positive way, because society and media have trained us to think more negatively.
As a matter of fact, I lost a really close friend over email. So he'd written something, and I wrote back, and the essence of what I said was, I totally agree, and I'm sorry that happened to you. But I gave a couple examples, and I don't know how he took it, but he wrote back, he said, I would appreciate it if you don't contact me again. It's like, wow. I thought I had said something supportive. He took it as an insult, and that's unfortunate, because we were like, I got a lot out of that friendship, But I learned, if you have something important to say, call.
Yeah.
And I've heard, even there was a comedian who said, don't complain about me on the internet. Text me or call me. And if you don't have my phone number, I don't care what you say anyway.
I think I've heard that.
I forget who said it, but it makes sense. If you don't have my number, it's because I don't know you in real life, and then I always come down to, if you're willing to pay my bills, you can tell me what to do, right? And the last time somebody did that was my parents. And they could tell me, your curfew is this time, these are the rules of the house, Dad gets the remote control on the TV, and you don't have parties at home. Like you don't do this and that at home, because they paid, it was their home, right? And I was their kid. I am still, but the last time somebody told me how to live was when I live at home. If somebody wants to tell me what I can say or do, or can or cannot do, if they're willing to pay my bills, we'll start the discussion. But you know what? I don't want to be subject to somebody telling me what I can do and say.
RuPaul has said that. I don't know if you know who RuPaul is, but famous.
I've heard that recently a bunch.
Famous drag queen, Drag Race. But same thing. If they don't pay your bills, don't pay them no mind. But I think that going with the be kind to people.
Yes.
And then just keep in mind, I just heard this. It's something that and you know him, but it's good to always have it come up. Is like, you don't like everybody, so everyone is not going to like you, and that is okay.
Yeah, you got to be okay.
Respect and be kind to everybody, but you have to realize not everyone's going to like you because you don't like everybody.
And do you have the bandwidth to like everybody? Because if I like somebody, I want to be around them. I want to spend time with them. Good point. So they say the human is only able to recognize so many faces, right? And I forget what the number is, but that's the perfect community, right? So if you grow up in a small town where you have your best friend from kindergarten all the way up to high school and maybe even university together, and then people from the high school marry each other. My town had one high school,
Same.
right?
Yeah.
So if you date somebody and it doesn't work out, you got to find out a way to not make it sour because they could marry your best friend, or you might get back together in a year, whatever. So, and it's not about dating. It's like you had to learn how to get along because you had one high school, right? And but I think to me that was optimal, right? Because it worked. When people, especially people like me, get into a big city where you see millions of faces every day when you're outside, it can be overwhelming. And I'm a person who gets overwhelmed, like by stimulation and noise. I've been to parties, outside parties at a Japanese bar where what's so funny is there's this whole image of Japanese people being so well behaved. When they start drinking, they get loud. And they start laughing and carrying on. And that's fine. I mean, they're having fun. But what is very interesting about Japanese is they think that because they're addressing each other, they're having a private conversation, but they can be sitting next to you or talking over your desk. Made a comment one time. I know this is stream of consciousness and it's messy, but we'll get to them. I'm going to land the plane here. I had two coworkers talking across my desk when I'm there, looking at they're yelling, not yelling, but talking across my desk. I looked up and made a comment, and he said, "This is a private conversation." I was like, "No, you're talking across my desk, which means I can hear every word you're saying." And they said, "But this is a private conversation. You don't need to get into this." I was like, "Okay." So two people can be in a coffee shop or a bar having what they think is a private conversation, and they don't expect me to understand them, and then look to the side and laugh, like have this explosive laughter, and it burst my eardrum. I was like, But they're in this space of two people where the rest of the world doesn't exist. So if the music goes up, more people come in, they start yelling louder, right? And so to me, that gets overwhelming. And so, that's what I'm saying is like the Japanese people have this image of being so well behaved, but when there's a party or when they're drinking, they get loud. Good thing is they don't start fighting.
Usually.
That's pretty rare.
Yeah.
It happens, but it's pretty rare. But they get loud, and I get overwhelmed. I've had a couple times at parties or events where I'm like, I gotta leave early. Like I can't do this anymore. It's too.
Yeah, definitely feel as I get older, I want to be around crowds less. So, for example, like if there's a bar I might stop by for a drink on Wednesdays, the same bar on Saturdays, I just see like a larger group of people. I'm like, I just go, oh,
Maybe
no.
not. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not up for that. Same with the morning commute. Like, for me, my morning commute, I'm pretty lucky. I'm going usually the opposite direction, so I can get a seat. It's not crowded. I'm not touching shoulder to shoulder anyone. And then I went to Tokyo this morning, and but actually, like at the timing was pretty all right. But I was like, oh, I don't have a seat. I'm like, well, that's not great. But the fact that like there was actually no one really standing like maybe this close to me on a train, that's pretty good. That's not crowded, but it was a change for my routine. I was like, don't love it. But again, it wasn't crowded, but it was more crowded than what I was used to. So I think as you get older, you get more, usually you get more, I would say introverted. It can be some people are extroverts and are not like that, but I find myself, I was more extroverted, younger, and I have my moments, but in the day-to-day life, I'm just like, no big crowds, that's fine, like no like loud places, but I get that.
Well, my commute is I wake up and roll out of bed because I work at home, and I'm really lucky to be able to do that. Even so, before the pandemic, there were times where I could go to a client's office in the morning. So if we, for example, we're supposed to be there at 9 at the office, but there's a meeting at a client site across town at 9:30, well, then I go there first, right? Or you're supposed to finish at 6, but if I got a meeting that finishes at 5:30, there's no point going back to the office. So I didn't intentionally schedule it that way, but some of my meetings ended at a time where it was more efficient to just go home. And then we started doing work from home thing during the pandemic, and then then I left that position, but I took a position that's remote, 100% remote, and that may be why I get overwhelmed in crowds.
Probably,
Yeah.
I'd say.
Because like I said, my commute is I roll out of bed, and I noticed during this time where my sense of fashion was never that good anyway. But I started realizing, like, I'm walking to the convenience store in sweats and a t-shirt. Okay, now I've fallen down the hill. I gotta. I started now to not every day, but I started to dress like one step above what I think I need to wear for that day. And today I I just wore normal clothes, but like, instead of wearing like a sweatshirt, I'll put on like my coat that goes over the suit, like, and just dress a little bit better, and stuff like that. That's, as I get older, that's the stuff I can control, right? I can control that. So, sorry, what time you got? My watch died. I didn't charge it last night.
4:44.
Okay. Well, let's land the plane.
Sure.
We could get into stamps and stuff more like that, but maybe another time.
Sure.
We could do that another time. But where can people follow you?
I would say Instagram's my biggest spot, the most active, and that's star.river.ikebana.
Okay.
And I have a website, same thing. It's starriverikebana.com.
Okay.
And then also on Twitter/X, under the same name. It's Star River Ikebana. So as a brand, just trying to be the same across the board. So if you just Google Star River Ikebana, things will pop up.
Cool. And I'll put that in the description as well. So let's communicate after this, and I'll get I always get a profile from people. I should have got that before, but I'd seen your interviews, and we communicate on X, so I knew like this would be an easy conversation. So,
good.
But and then I usually get a profile from people and put that in the description as well. And then
I'll have one ready.
good. That's really nice to have. Yeah. It's funny because I work with the people that are local, sometimes overseas, and the people that are easy and fun to work with, I find out do the best interviews. I've had people that I chased for a year, and they just like, oh, I'll be traveling next week. Let's shoot for February. Let's shoot for March. And you contact them in March, they're like, oh, I'm going to be traveling, okay, or not this week.
And this happened really quickly because I think you messaged me a few days ago, and I was like, well, I happen to be, off on Wednesday doing this thing, and I have this afternoon free, so let's do it then.
So I think for me, because I'm a romantic, like if it's stuff like this, if it's a relationship or something, the things that seem to go smoother, to me, they're meant to be, right? The things that like you have to, to be good at stuff, you have to grind, right? I mean, you want to get in good shape, you got to keep going to the gym when it sucks. But the things that keep falling through, it's like, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to do that. But the things that come naturally, or
you just kind of have to listen to your intuition,
Yes.
like when to let go of something.
yeah,
Which takes training, I think, mindfulness,
and a couple of failures.
Because to reach your goals and dreams, it will be a lot of hard work.
Yep.
But I think that if you persist and can do the grind, you'll find ways around the obstacles.
You will, and I've talked about this in videos before. Is like the stuff that people say, like, how do you spend all those hours editing, or how do you keep writing scripts, or how do you keep being creative? It's like, because I can't stop. That's why, right?
Yeah, I think, and again, following your passion, dream, goals. The first, it sounds just so
but say it.
Ironic and
Just
whatever. Just like the first step is the hardest, and getting over your fear, that's the hardest hurdle.
Yep.
And once you do that, and you start doing the small steps, they will grow and snowball into bigger steps. And it's really just getting over that fear. Like again, for me, being an Ikebana teacher, there's definitely at the very start, and even to some extent, because I'm not a master yet. You don't have to be a master to teach.
Okay.
Because I have like another 10 years, I think, before I become a master. So the system is, it's a very long system, just like in a lot of Japanese, traditional arts.
Mm.
It's a lifelong process.
Yeah.
But along the way, you're like, well, I mean, you're qualified to be a teacher now. So I have 3 teaching certificates,
Mm.
but I have like 5 more to go. And that's going to be probably maybe about 10 years or so. But just being like, well, can I teach? Am I good enough to teach? And especially in art.
Mm.
And I think that's not just Ikebana. I think with a lot of artists,
Yeah.
the biggest fear is, am I good enough?
Mm. I get it.
You have to get over that.
Yep.
And same, it could apply to sports, apply to
Mm.
making videos.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
am I good enough? And then the metrics of who likes it, how many people like it, how many likes you're getting. And you can get into the whole thing where I had to let go of that because,
Mm.
the, what's it called? Like on Instagram, the algorithms and
Yeah.
stuff. Like I used to get like hundreds, like 600 or thousands of likes on posts, and just eventually because of whatever they're changing on their end for the
Yeah.
program, it just changes it.
Yeah.
So now if like a post only gets like 150 likes, I'm like, that's fine.
Hmm.
You just have to let that go because it's not really it's not reflecting your talent.
Exactly.
Yeah. But a lot of people get the validation, and it feels good, but you have to always remind yourself that there's a lot of things out of your control, like you were saying earlier, like events, time of day, weekends,
Yep.
And then whatever algorithms they're inputting on their end.
Yep.
And a lot of the algorithms are actually meant to take away spotlight from some people or from some categories. So there's a lot of things you just can't control. So.
I was very worried. So there's a flower, and I keep looking for a better name, but the English is nanohana. It's a beautiful yellow, but the only English word I could find is rape blossom.
Yeah.
And I don't want to use that, right? I don't like the name, but you can't get around it, right?
Yeah.
It's a rape blossom. So when I say that on YouTube, I make sure and put the words in big letters. And then the Japanese translation is like, people have been banned for using words like that. And there are a couple words, not the really bad ones, the cardinal sins, like the totally unacceptable. There are a couple words that have different meanings, like the yellow blossom. And it's a minefield for creators because you don't want to say something bad and get in trouble.
At least in the case of flowers, because I've dealt with that too. Because there's and it's nice because in Japan it's called cat's paw, but it's like pussy willow.
Okay.
Which
you're gonna come up with some searches.
Like these days, that's a tough word. And even like in a class, I was teaching adults a few weeks ago, and like, and this is cat's paw, and like, oh well, where I come from, it's called pussy willow. I'm like, I know, I know, it's called that. But also just defaulting to its Latin scientific name sometimes. Yeah.
That's a good strategy. Yeah.
So sometimes I'll just be like, I'll be like, here's some willow, and then here's this. It's like, this is Silex dionythus. And they're like,
Hopefully, now, I know a lot of this stuff is done by algorithms because I've heard other creators say, I made a video about this, and I think because this word was in the video, it got taken down or demonetized or whatever.
Yeah.
The algorithm will do that. And then if you have a contact at YouTube, once you get to a certain level, you get a dedicated customer service or whatever, creative assistant that you can go to with problems if you get deleted or demonetized or something. But if you're talking about a current event and you have a hot take, first 48 hours are so important, and you say something and the algorithm flags it as, bad, and it gets taken down or demonetized, by the time you go through the appeals process, that news cycle is over and you're not going to get any hits. So here's a problem with technology, but whatever. That's the thing I worry about. Something. Maybe I think I overthink it, but hopefully they look at the context, right? Because there are things that maybe say in the future that would get me in trouble unintentionally, and I'd have no malice toward anybody when I do it or say it. But I think I overcorrect because I try to be extremely careful what I say.
And I mean, also, it's not going to be humans, really.
looking at
Exactly.
the content. It's put through, maybe this can be put through ChatGPT or AI moderators. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for the future.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like the AI, because they can scrape the video and get that's how they get the automatic closed captions. Is
Yeah.
AI goes through it and auto generates closed captions. Sometimes they're very funny.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're very bad, and they'll use homonyms that are completely wrong. But so I don't completely trust it yet. But that audio scraping, I think they call it, it goes through and it'll flag words, and so I think overthink it too much. But
That's part of the job, though.
yeah, part of the job. Yeah, you got to look for risks, right? Especially when you're doing something creative. So, anything else? I think we're coming up on time to close the studio. So
yeah, I think we're very close.
perfect.
No, I think that's everything. Because again, I post the food pictures on X Twitter, but usually on my Instagram, the videos I post how I'm making the food. So I would say like Instagram is my most active spot.
Okay.
And to chat and to interact and ask questions. But yeah, I think that's
very approachable.
Try.
We just met like 2 hours ago, so we've already had this 2-hour conversation. I could keep going. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.